Hey guys, hope you are doing well. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll wait for 2 more minutes for people to join. I'm just gonna shoot an email and yeah, going live with Rahul on building trust users. To invite your friends if you know they would be interested in joining. We'll just get started. YouTube live and just gonna guys, hope you're doing great. Post 5. We are live on YouTube. Best H. Nice. This is done. So let me send it. So hopefully, a few more people will be joining in. Okay. Cool. Hi guys. How are you? Hey. Hello everyone. Thanks for joining in. Wow. So many people. 24 people already. Nice. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in. How are you guys? Great. Mm-hmm. Awesome. We're super excited for this session because this is going to be one of the most insightful session we have in this series. If you haven't checked the series out, do check it out after the session is done. It's going to be fabulous experience for you. I'm just telling you that right now. Okay, it's 5:03. We'll start with the session at 5:05. Let's see if few people are joining. Uh, Before we get started, tell me, how's it going? What's new in your life? In the YouTube chat, tell me what's new in your life. Yes, Shreya, long time. We were busy with the conference, then something came up, but we are back. Now you'll see us more regularly. That's a promise. As what's going on? Cool, cool, cool. Mhm. Yeah, I did get a haircut yesterday. I had to host you guys, so I thought I should look more presentable. That's why I got a haircut. Okay, cool. Hmm. Just give me a sec. Okay, cool. Let's. This is going to be a good session for the community. Yes, it will be. So let's get started. It's 5:05. More people will join in as as they do. There are 33 people right now on the stream, as I can see. So let's get started. Okay, just turn on more lights. Hmm. Cool. Awesome. Welcome everyone to the live session, YouTube live session by Design Sundays. This is a playlist we are calling Design and Product Master Series with these amazing folks where they are sharing their experiences. As you know, trust plays a very important role in getting users to love your product or to just stick around for your product. Nothing can be a better example than the COVID times. In this time, we have seen crazy amount of panic and companies trying to solve it with a lot of things. Companies have spent a crazy amount of time and resources in adding the trust factors to the experience. From if we talk about temperature checks, contactless deliveries, OTPs to start the service or end the service, and more. And this is here to stay, right? It's not going away with just the pandemic. It is here to stay. In today's session, we are going to learn about how to build trust in stakeholders as well as users. What factors influence trust? What are the common mistakes people make? And more. For this session, we have with us a designer who has worked with all the cool companies you can think of, from Cleartrip, eBay, Microsoft, to now Amazon. He is an alumnus of National Institute of Design and IIM Bangalore. He's known for his amazing visual design skills, documentation, and sweating on meticulous details. Join me in welcoming Rahul Balu on the stage. Hi, hi Rahul. How are you?
Hey guys, how are you? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Rahul, how are
Yeah,
you?
so
First,
nice.
first of all, tell
I'm
tell
I'm
us.
great. I'm great. I'm great. How are you guys? How is everyone doing? I hope the lockdown is over. Everybody got
I
some
I I,
time and
I
space to
heard
go
in
out.
Bangalore, Rahul always faces this challenge of the audio, but it's fine. Hey Rahul, people are writing in. Hey Rahul. So Rahul, just tell me, I heard in Bangalore, you guys have the weekend curfew for now. How is it going?
Yes. Yes, it's from 5 o'clock on Friday evening to 5 o'clock on Monday morning. And it is the
Okay.
most horrible thing to do because at least they should have kept it till 9 o'clock on Fridays. We could have got at least 2, 3 hours to go out, but it is
Yeah.
crazy. So hopefully, this is the last week of the weekend curfew. So I'm looking forward to go out next week. So it's
Awesome.
been almost a month
Uh,
and a half we are locked inside the house.
for me, it has been 1.5 years, but who's counting now? Cool. So Rahul, I can't wait to see what you have for us. Can you tell us a little bit about what can we expect from this session?
So, one of the fundamental things as a designer you're going to build on is building trust. Either be it with your customers, be it with your stakeholders in and around you, or even developing belief system within yourself. Let's say that, it actually goes from inwards to outwards. From day one of your design job till the time you're going to retire, you're going to, I mean, probably post retirement also, you're going to be following, would have to build trust. That's how you're going to sell your product, that's how you're going to sell your ideas, that's how your ideas will come to life. So that's how you're going to communicate better. So I'm just going to touch upon a few things what I have picked up throughout the years, on my UX journey, on in my, I mean, previous advertising journey, and what are those smaller things, which I can share with other people where they don't have to commit the same mistakes what I have made.
Oh, this sounds amazing. And what I heard is you're going to bring in crazy insights. You're going to talk about your experience, and I, for one, I want to see what do you have in uh, in the store for us. So if you want to share your screen, please do share the screen. Guys, before till the time Rahul figures it out, can we have can we all say hello to Rahul in the chat, please? Okay, chat is a little slow, so see. Hi Rahul. Hi Rahul. So hello Rahul. Hey Rahul. I don't know Rahul if you can see the chat, but people are saying hello to you, and I think thank you so much guys for joining on a Sunday evening, and we ensure you this is going to be great. Rahul is one amongst a very good speaker. He brings crazy insights to us every time. So over to you, Rahul. I'm going to be backstage. Uh, Enjoy. I think wait. Let me.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, I assume it's an S. So hey guys, my name is Rahul. I have started my journey in fine arts. I currently work with Amazon, and I worked in various kinds of organization. I started my career with advertising, then I moved into digital design where I interned in ClearTrip. Then I moved into eBay. Then I had a short stint in Microsoft. Then from 2016, for the past 5 years, I was with Amazon. So I recently did a executive MBA just to understand how the business side of things work. But yeah, so far this has been my journey. So, yeah, so I am today here going to talk about trust. What exactly is trust? This is the dictionary meaning of trust. I would just pick out two words from here. One is the truth of someone or something, or the hope. The hope somebody pins it on you. That's exactly, those are the two true defining words which define trust, for me. And I've worked, always trying to earn it, or always trying to, I mean, if somebody has trusted me not to break it, that is a even harder task than actually earning the trust. So, yeah. So how does earn trust generally work? The earn trust generally is basically, it starts very internal from you first. Then then it goes into an organizational level wherever you're working, or the people around you, or anybody. Then the external thing, then the last one is the external part, where people who you don't know, or people who don't know your product or service would come and trust you. So as an internal, as I mean, today we are specifically going to focus on, how do you earn trust, as a designer within yourself. And at organizational level, how are you going to earn trust of your team, your internal stakeholders, various people, and externally, with the users slash customers, whoever you're going to cater to. So, the first part is the internal part. We're going to talk about, how do you develop a self belief system on your designs. The first and foremost question, as any designer who's starting out to work, this is the first and foremost question. Until unless you have a strong belief system on your own design, you would not be able to share it or sell it with others. So, the first tip what I would share is, observe people around you. The first thing about, building trust is basically, you'll have to meticulously observe people around you. If you go to an ATM, in India, you would see, people coming behind you, people coming constantly, standing behind you and looking. So, when you're going to design an interface, it has to be capable of, masking these kind of scenarios. And then when you look at a Uber driver, how he interacts with the interface, what are the factors he comes in, is it hard for him, is it, so by, and then, when you look at kids are very fascinating. They would know a lot more hacks, to the whole system than all of us put together. Then, I mean, if you observe old people, they the way they interact with their phones, the way they interact with things are very, very different. And then I mean, you keep getting these WhatsApp forwards, and, how they figured out technology, how they figure out things are very, very fascinating. So, and then the last part is, if you look at your peer group itself, right? We do a lot of things in a private zone. Then you see people in the cafe shops, very comfortably putting on a headphone and, working, taking work calls and everything. So these kind of different things would help you understand how the ecosystem around you functions. And whenever you're going to, build a design, you're going to apply these thoughts, back into your design. So the second important point is, believing and understanding the goals of the product. There could be business goals, and there could be user goals. When you say business goals, it could be the business driven goals, hey, I have to reach a certain visitor count, I have to, reach a certain revenue, and then my the user goals could be, overall satisfaction, overall time spent in doing the task. So these kind of things. So, and the third point is, understanding your customers. Understanding your customers becomes the core for everything you design. So let's say that, understanding your customers, there are umpteen amount of data things available around you to understand your customer. So let's say you're building your design, like you have to understand the customer first. Like you can understand customers through various, these are a small amount of techniques, like what typically we use in UX, but there are there are more than 100 different ways to understand customers. So for example, you can do a UX research. I mean, you can read about the user stories, you can listen to feedback calls, you read reviews of your products, whatever, if it is already launched, then you can read surveys or things, then you can do a usability study. Understanding customers, helps you pitch your product to the right level, to the right customers. Then the last part is, as a designer, whenever you're building anything, make sure that you have enough anecdotal evidence. Make sure that whatever you have learned in your user study or observing people, make sure that your design is built with all this evidences, everything put together. So when you're going to share your design with somebody, when they're going to look at it, they know that this is based on a certain kind of data, they know it is based on a certain research or inside data point. So without that, what happens is your design would just be an opinion. So to move away from, to solidify your opinion and assumptions, I mean, I would always say, use data, is evidences. And whenever you're going to design anything, you look at this particular screen, right? I don't know how many of you would have been aware of this Nero CD burner software what we had. I have used quite a bit of it. It has a certain amount of learning curve. You might not require so many options, you might not require so many things, but imagine, taking this and explaining to the end customer, who could be old people, who could be anybody and everybody, so. But if you keep your design, if you, as you're designing itself, if you keep it as simple as possible, it's going to solve a larger use case, and nobody has to go through the learning, nobody has to understand things, you don't have to complicate things. So there are multiple ways to do a design. Always choose the simplest way possible for the user. So, and every single element what you put, every single element you add in the interface, every single thing every single thing visible to the user has to be tied to the core goal, purpose, or the user need. Don't have any element in your screens, or any design you're going to create which doesn't have a goal or a purpose tied to the user. So this is just a summary of what we spoke so far. One is believe and understand the goals of your product, observe people around you, understand customers, use anecdotal evidence and user studies to build your designs, keep it as simple as possible. So the second part is how are you going to influence your teammates and your stakeholders with your designs. The first and foremost thing is it's a lot more to do with how you're going to set your clear goals and timelines. So whenever you're picking up a project, make sure that you spend a lot of time thinking through how much time my project would take. What are the clear parameters I'm going to have, what are my smaller milestones I'm going to achieve, and what are the larger milestones I'm going to achieve. So that would help you and your stakeholders be in sync with the time and the space, be in sync with the time and the milestones you're going to come up with. The second one is if you're committed to this, by doing this, please make sure you deliver on those. There is always a thing under promise and over deliver. Don't over promise and things. I would say under promising would also lead you into problems. So my suggestion is make sure you estimate things at the right time. I mean, with the right kind of goals, right kind of timelines, and deliver whatever you have committed to. And then let's say that many times as a designer you would always have an opinion, and your product manager or your anybody or your or your sales team or any team will have a different argument or a different point of view. My suggestion is don't discard those points. As a designer, it's your core duty to you don't have to agree to everything, but you it's you completely can't disagree and leave out those pointers. My suggestion is actually listen to their point of view. Even if you see a merit, even if you don't see a merit, make sure you go in that path and explain those things for them. So this is a core thing for anything you're going to do. Let's say if people are able to listen to you, if people understand that you listen to their ideas, and then you are willing to take that those 2-3 smaller bets for them, they would come 10 times more steps for you. So my suggestion is, like, if you have a disagreement, if you have something, disagree with them, but, like, make sure that you deliver, and then explain them, like, why your point of view is right. And then, like, proactively follow up with people, because what happens as a designer most of the time, what happens, we get a job, we finish the job, and then, like, we typically don't have a way of going back, because there are multiple instances throughout my career I've seen, like, where I have followed up. The next time onwards, the timelines have become very lenient. They start trusting me a lot more the moment I show that proactiveness with people. Then one other thing is, as a designer, most of the times what happens, you would be leading the conversation, be it a small company, be it a big company, mid-size or a large size company. What happens is, design would be in the forefront, as you can see, like, at least from what we're seeing from 2012 to now. Lot of companies are being design led. Like, design becomes the first part, who will sketch out the vision, who will present to the stakeholders. So my suggestion is, like, you have a very fantastic opportunity, like, make sure that, you pick up that pattern, like, remove barriers for others, like, and facilitate those discussions. Again, the summary of what we spoke, like, we set clear goals and timelines, do what you said you're willing to do, disagree and commit, proactively follow up with people, remove barriers for others, and facilitate the discussion. So the last and the most important part is, like, how are you going to earn trust of your user and customers, with your designs. And the first pointer is actually, like, set the right expectations. Let's say you're designing a loading screen. Don't just say 75% or, like, 80%, 90%. Make sure that, like, you show the exact time. Like, you show that, like, hey, it's going to take you 2 minutes and it's going to take you 2 minutes and 45 seconds for this loading to complete. So that kind of sets the right kind of expectations. So these are very small things what you're going to do, which is going to help you earn the trust of your users much better. And the second part is, like, let's say you creating a 3-step 4-step flow. Don't just keep on saying step 1, step 2, step 3. Make sure that, like, what are those 4 or 5 activities he's going to do in that. So that kind of helps him be calm. Like, that kind of helps him, like, understand, hey, this is how much is left, and this is what is expected out of me at each level. The second part is reduce the decision making time, hide the less important options. I'm damn sure you would have seen these kind of remotes in our houses, like, where there are crazy amount of buttons, where we use only 3 4 of them. And especially with Netflix, and, like, with all the Amazon Prime and everything coming in OTT, like, we rarely use the channel selector, we rarely use any of the other things. Like, we use only 2 things in the TV remote, which is on off, and probably, like, the volume buttons. So, like, it's very important when you're going to design anything also to apply the same principle. Whatever is more important, whatever is going to be frequently used, make sure that, like, they are visible to you all the time. Like, they are not over competing with your what do you say, they're not over competing with your your core product itself, so it will not lead to confusion. And I think one very good example what you can see is the Apple remote, or even the the latest remotes what we're getting. We have only 3 4 simple buttons, and all the other functionalities are actually hidden, one level deeper. And match the real life expectations. Match the, when I say match the real life expectations, does it mean, it's like, let's say you're designing a digital experience or any experience. So there are people who pursue things a certain way. Like, when I'm reading a book, like, think of it like a bookmarking feature, like, or things like, highlighting them, or or just just saving them for later. So those are the kind of expectations people would have from you. The more closer you go with their real life expectations, the, like, the more human your app is going to become, and the more adaptation it's going to have. So the trust is, so they, it will reduce the learning curve. People will start trusting your app, like, people will start using your app more. So the lot of your cues are actually around the first part what I spoke about, observing people and, like, matching the real life expectations. Then the mirror and match user expectations. When I say mirror and match user expectations, like, you would have seen, at least in the e-commerce, this particular pattern coming up. Like, when people are buying a certain item, like, they really want to see, like, how does that look like, and how does that actually feel. Like, when I click on a blue, how does it look from different angles, how does the colors look like, but we might not be able to show everything. But for example, 128 GB is going to be an internal specs. You're not going to show that, but at least from the colors, let's say if it is a Pixel 3 versus a Pixel XL, how that is going to look, that people will get a real understanding of it. So when you match these expectations, the confidence of buying those things would be much better. And the other more important part is keeping the user engaged. Let's say that I mean, you would have seen this interface everywhere. You would have seen this, in multiple amount of places. You have ordered a food, it's a very simple food delivery app, right? They can simply tell you, hey, your food is arriving in 27 minutes, only this particular part in the right hand side corner, and they could be done with it. But the whole thing of keeping you engaged, it reduces the anxiety of the users and help you earn a lot more trust. They actually planted a guy, where he travels all the way. It's a simple storytelling what you do, but that kind of keeps the user in check, hey, my order is being placed, my delivery guy has reached. So those are the smaller things which will help you earn the trust of users. Then avoid small mistakes. I think this has happened with me multiple amount of times. If you take a minute to read, what has been put, it's just a simple comma, unable to eat diarrhea and unable to eat, and with the comma and the diarrhea, so the meaning completely changes. Many times you would have seen that, let's say that when you're going to make a payment, so I've seen that, instead of refund, there somebody had returned replay, replay or something like that. Then it kind of, I was very scared to pay beyond that. So your small copy becomes a very important part of your design. So make sure that, you pay attention to those smaller details, those actually make your designs. So 10 small mistakes, your user might not even going to come back. So write in simple language. I'm damn sure you would have got all the mails from, you would be getting a lot of mails from a lot of people, and then some of them, you would actually have to Google what they have entered to understand. So write as simple copy as possible. Sometimes, and India is not yet matured at a level where, we have UX writers, or where you have a dedicated person who's writing the copy for you. Many times the owners would come on the UX designer to do it. So my suggestion is, let's say if you get a copy from a product manager or somebody else, make sure that, when you read it, it is as simple as possible. It's as easily understandable as possible. Then use social proofs, wherever possible, to to facilitate your design, to build trust on your design. I would not talk about the first image, and as all of you go know what is the first rule of Fight Club is. So, and the and let's say that, when you're going to buy a new app, when you're going to buy a new let's say that, when you're going to buy a new app, let's say that when you want to visit a new restaurant, you would actually rely on all the other people experiences. So if you have access to these kind of data, make sure that, you bake it into your design as much as possible, leverage them as much as possible. So this is a simple survey what they have done, to understand, which badge kind of gives the most trust, when paying online. So this was conducted in 2013 by I mean, Baymart.com. But if you see, actually, see the least trusted brand has the most complicated design possible. As the design gets simplified, the trust level also increases. So these are very simple things, but your social proofs, even if you're building a social proof, the trust level has to be, built that way. So if you look at the Komodo, the logo itself is not visible. So so generally, when you're building something, it has to be very clear, it has to be very simple, and it has to be very trustworthy. So then one other thing is, always wherever you find a space, wherever you have an option, make sure that, you show some positive gestures, you delight the users wherever possible. So when I say positive gestures, it could be just adding a simple smiley, if you can see, when you're going to pay through your Face ID, or so it just shows you a simple smiley, those are positive gestures. Then the other important part is transparency. These are, I think this is a very important conversation where we are going in right now. So there is this whole concept of dark patterns and everything. I would not want to jump into it. That's a topic for the other day. But transparency becomes a key in understanding everything. Like for example, when you go into a H&M website, you would see all this privacy, all these things, but it doesn't really tell you in very plain simple language, what is this privacy, what are the data they're collecting and things like that. So, and then there is this whole case of Facebook versus Apple on this, allowing I mean, accessing permissions for the users, so you guys could, as a designer, wherever you find these kind of things, it's on you to simplify the language. It's on you to, simplify these things and convey, because these are very smaller factors, but this can break the whole trust. If somebody is very concerned about their privacy, if somebody is not doesn't really want to reveal their data to your websites, they might not even come and shop with you, just by reading at these popovers and things like that. So it is very important, to make it as clear and as simple as possible. And Apple does a very good job of doing it. Let's say that, when you compare the H&M privacy policy versus, your Apple privacy policy, you see that, it's very clear: allow while using the app, allow once, and don't allow. That's as simple as that. So make sure that, you simplify these things as simple as possible for the people. Then this is I have an ad blocker in my system. When I there are This is the experience, on two different websites. The first website is Verge. Verge explains me the problem, saying that, hey, because of ad blocker, we would not be able to earn our revenue. Our team relies on advertising, and then, help us, please, help us unblock your ad blocker. But when you go into Times of India, it completely blocks the UI. It doesn't give you any reason why ads are required, why we have to give them access. Why we have to give access, to the why do we have to disable our ad blocker? So these are smaller things, but what happens is break a lot of seller this will break a lot of customer trust. So my suggestion is, whenever you come across these kind of popovers, wherever it is blocking you, make sure that, you're being polite, you're explaining why you're doing it, where the users can be with you, and then, if they find merit in it, so then they would be able to take that action. And I think I earlier spoke about the dark patterns. Earlier, Zomato used to have this one rupee added, by default. I've seen it many times. I really don't have understanding of, where are they feeding, who are they feeding. I don't know where their NGO is and stuff. If you're in a rush to order something, you really don't know. But I kind of felt, many times, after ordering, why is that 1 rupee, why is that thing being added separately? It could be 1 rupee, but, multiple times, that kind of breaks trust. That, it kind of, it's a simple 1 rupee, but multiple times what happens is, I'm doing it over and over again. I would kind of start thinking that, okay, what are the other sneaky ways, they're trying to get me through here. So avoid as much as possible. And the same thing in the second interface, if you see, for me, I prefer to pay my full page looks like a disabled button. So sometimes these when you're going to design these things, the product or the sales team, everybody would be would have a different understanding, but it's on the designer to kind of explain these, what are the merits and demerits of doing these things. And let's say that this is provide a clear path for decision reversal. When I say decision reversal, let's say a user has taken a certain action, he should have a very clear way to go back. It could be very simple thing, your cross button or your going back button, or how can I reverse those decisions. Let's say that I have not given you access to something, I need to provide that path for me to actually reverse my decision. Without that, what happens is, many times, if the users are not able to reverse those decisions, they might not actually come back to your app. They might think, then they would actually uninstall. This has happened so many times, when you look at so many videos, that it could be a very simple thing. They might not have a clear help or something. They would actually uninstall the whole app and reinstall it all over again. And create delight wherever possible. This is the last and the most important thing. When I say delight, it could be a very simple thing of pre-filling your email ID. Like they typically know when you're going to type G, 90% of the time it's going to be Gmail. So just simply pre-populating those things, then like this is I'm sure like you guys would have come across this when when you're in Chrome browser, when there is no internet connection, you get to play this simple game. Like it's a very simple thing, but it kind of creates a delight. Like let's say that you have a simple network outage for close to 2 to 3 minutes, and the network is going to come back. You're not going to go out of the application or do something else. You're going to actually like engage with the application. So like my suggestion is like if you guys have not seen Mailchimp, actually go see. Like they have a lot of these things. They try to mimic as much as emotions what everybody would be going through. Like this is basically when you're going to send your subscribers, let's say you have umpteen amount of subscriber, you're going to send out a mail. Like you are actually going to be nervous. You're actually going to be thinking 2 3 times before taking that particular action. So they have replicated that through like a simple sweaty hand of that UX gorilla. So yeah. So how do you create delight? Like, let's say that like, when people are anxious about a certain situation, people are anxious about a certain thing, like, you put in an unexpected reward that kind of creates delight. For example, one very common pattern which you come across is wherever you're paying, like, let's say as you started entering your debit card or your credit card number, it detects whether it's a Visa or a Mastro. Then you're a lot more confident that my payment is going to go through. It's a very simple thing. It is just two logos, like, which is going to swap between each other. That one simple action, like, facilitates your whole payment system, creates a lot more trust in that. So as we spoke all these things, like always try to create delight for the users, show only what matters for the users, pay attention to every detail possible, mirror and match like user expectation, acknowledge and understand, show positive gestures, give all your eyes and ears while communicating. When I say give all your eyes and ears while communicating, there are different sensory things, like what you can engage with, like especially when you're designing a mobile app. Like make sure that like if like you put in the right kind of sounds, you put in the right kind of colors. Don't just design only for the eyes. Make sure that like you're using the other sensory things available also for you. you know uh, and let's say that if there is a bad option, let's say if the result is not there, like power to say I don't know is much better than showing them bad options. Like that happens to us all the time, right? You end up searching something, and you end up completely getting a different product or completely getting a different thing. Like always make sure that like it's okay to say no, that like hey, you have reached like we are not able to match your expectations. Like try with a different search code, try with a different thing, than actually showing a bad option. So a few tips, like whatever I picked up throughout the years. One is at every stage of the design process, whatever you're doing, make sure that like you step back and think, like if you are in the user shoes, would you do the same? Is it the simplest way possible? And learn to articulate your thoughts through word sketches and mood boards. Don't just communicate verbally with them, because not many people would be able to understand your verbal communication. Always make sure that like you're putting it out in words, or at least sketching it and sharing it. Be aware of why and how from day one. Let's say that like you're working, you're starting any project. Make sure that like why you're doing the project, how is it going to impact the customers, what it is going to change the life of the customers. Always ask yourself, is this the best version of the design you are putting out? Like are you doing any compromise, or is it the best version of your design? Is it the best what you can do? And take feedback from your peers, and don't be defensive about it. Like sometimes you get positive feedback, sometimes you might not get very positive feedback, but like a lot of times it's very important for you to listen, understand what they have said, document them, and work on those things. So yeah. And the second last tips what I would want to give is, never show your design or a prototype as a standalone artifact. Like always tie it to your scenario. Always like always put it in a task with a persona. Like make sure that like every time you're like sharing your design, don't show them as three empty screens. Like say that, hey, XYZ person would look at the screen and he would look at these three four things. So that would help your like stakeholders understand the problem much better. They understand, they look, then they start looking through that persona what you have created. And as a designer, one of the very important things to document every single meeting, every single design process. So let's say that like there's a decision being taken in any meeting, as a designer, if you have taken that note, your next meeting would be much smoother. You can just start from saying that, hey, this is what we have discussed in the previous meeting, this is the decision based on, this is the feedback, this is the meeting notes, and I'm presenting my design from here. So it saves you a lot of time. So make sure you that and document your failures and acknowledge them. Many times what happens is, let's say that like you're working on something, you're iterating on 3 4 5 items, you tend to delete them or you tend to discard them. Like you never really put them in, in your design documentation or like in your presentation. It's always very important, to add all those things in your appendix. Let's say that if somebody, where you're presenting or when you're sharing with somebody, like if somebody has a question, have you tried XYZ options, you can simply pull them out and just show them right away. So that's very important. So in the interest of time, I'll just skip the video. So, these are my closing thoughts. These are my simple advice to you guys. Like, I want you guys to design something, don't care about the limitation of the technology, just design something you believe is useful, something you really care about, and something you truly believe in. So, if you start designing something which you believe, and you care about, and you find it useful, then a lot more people around you would simply start finding it a lot more useful. And thanks guys, thanks for listening, and thanks for being such a great audience. I am available on LinkedIn if you guys want to discuss anything. Yeah. And thank you, Rohan, for inviting me for the talk. You have been such an amazing host. It is always fun. It is always such a pleasure to collaborate with you.
Thank you so much, Rahul. This was a very insightful session. If you like, we would like to see the video. Guys would like can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. We
So
can
this
we can see the
is
video.
okay. Yeah. So this video is actually like a very inspiring thing for me. The quote what I spoke
Hmm.
about kind of got picked up from there. So it's like I'm damn sure a lot of you guys know Steve Jobs story. Like when he comes back to Apple, so he tries to do a lot of changes. Then like he, his one of his most favorite teams has always been the design team in Apple. If you've seen the movie, like you would see that in the fast part, like before he before he goes out of the company, he would be spending a lot of time working on typography, graphical user interface, and all. So this is after he comes back, and this is where he and Jonathan Ive meet first time. Link probably in the chat or somewhere else. Yeah. Does it work, guys?
Sure. Yeah. It's better, I think, that ways.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rahul. This was a very insightful session, and I actually wanted you to show the video because I know a little bit backstory to how how it's how the idea came, and you were explaining it
Yeah.
to us
Yeah.
back then. So that's why I wanted
Yeah.
everyone to see the video, but this is helpful as well. Guys, if you have any questions for Rahul, to put it in the chat. Rahul, if you yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a few questions of my own, and I
Yeah.
would like to ask you before, the audience ask you their questions. So first is it's more of a request that you told us about this thing last time, that Amazon has $1 billion recipe, uh,
Uh-huh.
and can you briefly touch upon that? What is it, and how does it work?
So, when I have to say Amazon has $1 billion recipe, it is very simple. They write a lot of documents. So they
Mm-hmm.
communicate in a way where everybody understands from day one. So the thing
Mm-hmm.
what they use for communication is something called as PRFAQs, a press release
Mm-hmm.
and frequently asked questions. So let's say any
Yeah.
project you're going to start, you're a designer, developer, anybody in the organization, like across all levels, will will have to write a PRFAQ. Any new idea, like it could be something as big as Alexa, or it could be something as big as AUS, or to something very small, like if you're going to launch a button or going to add a button in the whole UI. Everything requires a PRFAQ. When I say PRFAQ, press release, it means like, when the external press release, when you're going to share it with the press people, like, when you're going to go in the newspaper, how you're going to describe your features and how common people are going to read that particular news. So this is meticulously followed across every level, at every meeting, everywhere. So that kind of helps everybody in the company come together within that one common vision. So that vision helps, when you're going to start with the common vision from day one, like, then it is going to be much easier for you. And then everything you're
Hmm.
going to build around is going to be from this particular single thing. So that is what we call as the recipe for the billion, for building $1 billion company. Or we can simply put it, now we can put as a $1 trillion company. So
Hmm. Yeah. I think, like, one of the things that we picked up and we instituted that in the onboarding process of any new joining at Zomato as well. I remember that we used to read about this 6-page PR, like, that process that Amazon has, that, you have to write a 6-page about a thing. And if you can't read it, if you can't write that much, you don't know about the product really well. You don't really know what
yeah,
the, and it had a very important element to it, which was called, before even making anything, when you are actually on the ideation phase, you actually write
mhm,
about how people are going to write a testimonial about it, right? Like how
yeah,
you are actually manifesting like, how the people are going to perceive it, use it, and that was really helpful, and we used to have it. Super helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. The second
yeah.
question that I have is, sorry, yeah, you were saying something.
No. There's a book called Working Backwards. Like, you guys can Google and find it in all
Yeah.
the websites. And I mean, that actually talks about, like, what we follow on day-to-day basis. Yeah,
Is it thinking backwards or working backwards?
working backwards.
Okay. I have one called thinking backwards. Yeah, and this is also something that follows the same thing. Like,
Okay.
you start with the end thing first, and then you come back to the ideation and everything. Guys,
Okay.
I have dropped in the Rahul's LinkedIn profile in the link. Do connect with him. He's super helpful. You should get connected with him. Rahul, my second question to you is, one of the things that you mentioned, when you are building the stakeholder trust in the stakeholders, is very important, right? And as you have been in the industry for a very long time, and you obviously have mentored so many designers. I just want to, which, yes, thank you so much for sharing the link. I'm just going to share it with everyone else. Thank you so much, Rahul. Yeah. So Rahul, what are some of the mistakes young designers make uh, while they join the team, which hurts, like, which stops them from earning trust from the team?
I think first thing is, I mean, in NID we had this feedback, like, kill your darlings. So basically, what happens is, as a designer, when you're going to come into your team, you would be very attached to your design. You would think of it like your own child. You think, like, hey, nobody can't say any negative things about my design. People take everything in a sense, like, the person doesn't like me. Like, they don't really understand, they're critiquing the design, not the person. So that is the first and foremost mistake. I've committed a lot of them. I've committed a crazy amount of them. Like, I have taken, like, 2-3 days off, like, just to, you know just to grieve and come back, like, but I think one of the things is, you have to separate the design from the designer. Like, the feedback is actually going to be on your design. And then, like, it's okay, like, if the first, at least, like, 2-3 years, if you get bashed up, or, like, if you get a lot of negative feedback, your designs are actually going to be much, much, much better. So later on in the day, so don't take the design feedback or feedback what is given to you at a junior level, like, as like, it's feedback on you. It is not the feedback on you, it's a feedback on your designs.
Yeah. Yeah. So, just separate yourself from the
Yeah,
feedback. It's for your work, not for your not for you, right?
Hmm.
Super helpful, guys. If you have any question, do drop it in the chat. I am going to ask one more till then. So actually, it's a question from the audience. How do you analyze your data after user research? This is Biswadeep. He's asking you this question because he struggles with it. So I'm gonna repeat it. How do you analyze your data after user research?
So when you're starting your user research itself, you would have followed a simple set of questions. Let's say that you're going to do your user research with 5 to 6 different people, and what you're going to do is this is where your writing and documenting your user research notes come into place. You're going to document your notes. Let's say that the question what you asked, how all those 5 people have answered those question, how 5 people have answered, is it any different or is there any pattern what you see? The pattern could be a simple word, pattern could be a whole sentence, and a pattern could be a silence also at times. So that is how you're going to analyze. So then from there, you're going to understand, you're going to pick out that particular word, sentence, or whatever thing what they've said. You're going to build on those insights, then you're going to cross refer it with other parts of your research. Is this kind of a insight whatever you have found in the first question, is it being carried forward in multiple other places or not? So that's how we are
Hmm.
going to analyze your interview. So my suggestion is it's a little harder task. It is very very hard in the initial days to do, but that's where what happens is, let's say that you go for a user research, you have to come back and then type out every single word, every single thing what they've spoken,
Hmm.
documenting that, and then looking at them and analyzing would help you arrive at that insight much better.
Yeah, that's helpful, I think. Uh, Biswadeep, let us know in the comments if you have any follow-ups. Deepak asked, what's the best way to showcase your solution to stakeholders?
Okay, so the best way to showcase your solution to stakeholders is actually a prototype. Be it small, be it big, there are tools available which will take you just simply 5 minutes. you know
Mm-hmm.
don't go with fancy presentations, don't go with all this diagrams and everything. Always go with the story. For your first slide should talk about, first slide should explain, saying that who's the persona is going to be, who's the person who's going to use it, and what is the task you're going to do in that particular area. Then you're
Yeah.
going to go through a simple step of, if that persona of that person who you're going to share with, how is he taking that particular journey, and the journey can be done through a prototype. If you're not able to do a prototype, a simple PPT of screen wise narration could also work. So
Hmm.
I hope I answered your question, Deepak.
Yeah. Yeah. So next question is something that a lot of designers struggle with, and this happens in the early stages of their life a lot, is not solving the right problems, not focusing on the right problems. So the next question is just about that. How do someone know that they're working on the right problems?
So see, I mean, what happens is, let's say when you there's nothing called as a right problem or a wrong problem. It's a problem what you're going to solve. Whether it's going to be a big problem or a small problem, that is what is going to differ. So let's say that when you're going to get a problem, you'll have to find out what is the data behind it, why is the problem coming from, and and who's facing this particular problem. Is it the user or
Yeah.
is it some, I mean, and how bigger, let's say, is it a problem for my 5% of the users face, or is it my 80% of the users are facing this thing, this
Hmm.
particular problem. So that's where you're going to define, that's where you're going to know that whether the problem is the right problem to go after or not. So it's, and then a lot of time when you start understanding your core business and you start understanding the core goals of whatever is being given to you, you start focusing on the right problems.
Hmm. True. So basically, essentially, it all comes down to uh, there could be a bigger problem you could be solving, but there are no wrong problems, right? So people
Yeah,
must be
yeah,
facing it, but you might not be focusing on a bigger picture, but there are
yeah.
no wrong problems.
Yeah, for
That's helpful, I
example,
think. I think.
in a simple thing, let's say you're designing a flow, you forgot to add a forgot password link, you know,
Hmm.
versus versus something
Button to
else,
log in.
oh yeah,
Button to
button
log
to
in.
log in and button to log in and button to register, like, so, and how many percentage of the people are actually facing it, like, if people are logging in through your Gmail directly, they might not even require that forgot password flow. But if your 80% of customers are actually coming through their email and password, they're entering manually, then your forgot password becomes your 80% problem.
Hmm. True. True. So,
So it's
guys, yeah. Sorry, Rahul,
yeah,
please.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying if you guys have any more questions for Rahul, do drop it in the chat. I'm just gonna take one, two more questions for now. So there was one around. Yeah, so there is one question which is around. You were mentioning this Swiggy's example of showing map and interactive elements with arriving in 23 minutes. Uh, People are asking, like, why does Amazon uh, why Amazon doesn't have live tracking?
I don't have answer to that. Like, so yeah,
Okay.
we are working on such features. It should be out soon. Like, I mean, Amazon focuses on, like, for example, let's say that, like, if your package is coming from Ahmedabad, like, imagine I'm showing a
Yeah.
map from Ahmedabad to Bangalore. It's gonna
No, no,
take
no,
you
no.
like,
So okay. So this is something
yeah,
that is coming from me, but uh,
yeah.
you know, uh, I want when it leaves the final delivery station, or when the the partner who is delivering this says that, okay,
Mhm.
now I'm going to go deliver this package. Then
Mhm.
if they can actually start showing it, that would also be very helpful for me. For me personally, it doesn't matter actually, because they actually leave it outside the house. I go and pick it up, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, cool.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. So I think
so
you
one
talked
is
about, like,
like, I think the it's very it's also a function of logistical behavior versus micro hubs and deliveries, right? Like, for a food item, it if it's not hot, you might not be able to eat it, and which needs to be delivered in 30 minutes. That's why maybe live tracking becomes a lot more important than something like of package delivery or something big delivery. If, like, it's going to come in like a day or two, it's fine, right? So I don't know if map would be that helpful in that case.
you just keep a watch out. You might get a feature similar to that, like, in some time in the future. I can't talk much about
uh
it, but yeah, it will come someday. It'll be
Guys,
surprise.
is it a design Sundays session, or yeah, this is a town hall, Amazon insights town hall? We just got a small confirmation from Rahul that something is in the works. Okay, so Achal has a question: how do you measure your designs, that is it successful or not?
So it's I mean, this is a very complicated questions, like, everybody has been asking for. My simple suggestion is, like, if you're gonna, like, that's where you're gonna start off with your goals. If it is achieving the goals, then it is gonna, like, you consider it, like, 80% there. So that's how you have to define your success criteria before you start your
Yeah.
design. You would actually not define it, like, after you design things. So, like, let's say that, like, hey, I'm designing for more, let's say I'm designing for more consumption, like, my design is going to be I mean, like, built on that, like,
Yeah.
I could have a target number, I could reach it. If I'm not reaching it, then I tweak my design more to reach that particular segment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mostly it has to do with your design will also change based on your goals. So if something is more
Yeah.
important for the
Yeah.
business and it also aligns with the user's goal, you might
Yeah.
want to put it up slightly up in the order or something like that. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
define what's your goal, what is your goal
Yeah.
before you actually go down into making the pixels or something, right? That is
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
Rahul is
Yeah.
also mentioning. Cool. I think I think this is the last question probably we're going to take, and this is from Gitanjali, and she's asking, can you briefly share about the usability testing practices that you have been following in your journey?
Okay. So the first, I mean, probably when we were in eBay, like, back then, what we used to do was, actually, we had this very fancy lab, where we would project all the interface in a person's computer. We'll call the person, then we would actually make them. We'll have a script, we'll give them a task, and then they would interact with it and stuff. But over the years, things have changed, things have evolved. What we have seen is actually creating a prototype actually and going to the customer or the seller or whoever the user space and sharing it with them and getting their feedback has actually been much richer. You get to learn a lot more things, instead of calling them to their lab and stuff. So that is something which is one of the methods what we have been following. And then one of the other usability tests, there are a lot of websites these days, for example usertesting.com, which we rely on completely, where we there's a bunch of people readily available, where we create a prototype, we put it out, and then we just simply look at how we go about it. So there are the two common things what we follow these days is, one is moderated usability, where we actually give them a task and say hey, you have to perform xyz task, and then observe them, take notes, similar to what we do in a user research, then come up with the results. Then it is a unmoderated one is a very simple way where I say I give you a rough UI and you define your goals, what you want to do, whether you find it useful, and where you actually explore and figure out the solution yourself. So then where we
Hmm.
observe and we start questioning him on his journey, saying that hey, why are you using a search, why are you using a browser, and why are you
Hmm.
why are you clicking on a certain button versus it. So these are the two ways what we conducting majoritarily what we do in usability these days. Yeah, and we can talk about this usability as a whole session in itself, 1 hour full
Yeah.
session we can
Yeah.
just talk about just the usability methods. But yeah.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Rahul, for that. I think Gitanji, this answers your question. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in. I think that was it. Thank you so much, Rahul, for being here and
Yeah,
being this awesome person that you already are and bringing all these crazy insights for us.
yeah,
Guys, if you
thanks
haven't
Rahul.
already, do connect with Rahul on LinkedIn. I have dropped him his ID in the comments. Please connect with him and how was the session, also tell him. Please conduct one soon, Rahul, on usability testing session. So Rahul,
Sure.
session request for you. Cool.
Sure, let's
Awesome,
do a
guys, thank you
detailed one.
so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Guys, if you haven't already, do follow Rahul. Do check out our Discord channel as well. There we are sharing a lot of new events coming up and cool, exciting updates as well. And we will try to continue bringing some amazing content in the future to you guys. It's been over an hour. And thank you so much. I'll see you guys very soon. Bye bye. Thanks, Rahul.
Bye guys.
In podcast.